I like to hook up the drain assemblies first. This way you don't accidentally hook up the input first, turn the water on, and blow water everywhere. Let's get the output hooked up, and so then we can work backwards. That's my preference. So I'm unpacking the drain assembly right now. I'm just going to spin the RO around. Here is the output side of the membrane. It's the right side. Take the drain assembly, take the short tubing, put the black tubing in the black fitting, and put the white tubing in the white fitting. Really simple. Just like that. On all GrowoniX filters, the black lines depict the drain side. That's the water that's going to go to drain, the wastewater. And the white tubing is the RO, or the permeate water. And so the permeate water is going to go to your storage tank or your reservoir or whatever you're hooking your RO water up to. For today, we're going to put it in a beaker. Or, yeah, a beaker. Now the drain water, it can drain out into a sink or any kind of drain that you have. It can also be plumbed out, let's say, to your yard, and you can irrigate plants, shrubs, trees, anything that might need some water, because it's kind of a shame to waste the drain water. You might as well water some plants in the yard. If that's not an option, or it's the middle of winter, you plumb the drain to a drain pipe under the sink, which is very common, and that's why the unit comes with a drain clamp. What you want to do is position it over the pipe that you're going to use. Here's a piece of 1.25 inches. Let's say it's under the sink. And position it where you're going to use it, and just take a 1/4 inch drill bit and put it down the throat of the fitting and drill a hole into this pipe. Not all the way through, just through one side of the pipe. You could also put a pencil down there and mark the hole. Alternatively, you can just drill a 1/4 inch hole in the pipe and make sure you position this over the hole by looking down it. All right? Now, you don't want water to leak, so they come with these really great little sticky back seals. You put it over the hole that you drilled. Put the drain clamp on it. Make sure it fits over the hole perfectly. And then just tighten the bolts up. Don't over tighten it. You don't need much. The gasket seals everything. So now we're going to hook up the input water on this GX1000. Now, the unit comes with a garden hose connector. It's a brass garden hose connector. It's a female swivel, and you can connect a garden hose right to it. We really put these on there so you can get connected really quick if you're in a pinch. Everyone's got a garden hose. I'm not the biggest fan of garden hoses, and I don't really recommend hooking these up with garden hoses, because garden hoses do not seal through the threads. They're not compression threads. They seal through O-rings. A garden hose, washer, these little gaskets that you've seen. And this is just not, to me, something you'd want to use on a permanent installation ever. But if you're using it in a garden and you need to make water in a pinch, of course it works. People request them like crazy. That's why we put them on there. So now we're going to hook up the input water supply, the feed water supply, to a GX1000. What we prefer is either Schedule 80, 3/4 inch Schedule 80, or this CTS tubing, 3/4 or 1 inch CTS tubing. You could even use 1/2 inch CTS if you want. 3/4 is preferred. I love 1 inch as well. These CTS fittings are great. They're just like the Quick Connect RO fittings we have, but they're big and huge, and they lock. They twist them and they lock, and it doesn't come out. And so you can thread these into the unit, and they have all kinds of Quick Connect 90s and elbows, and you can run your CTS network right to your RO filter, and it's flexible too. So I really like the CTS tubing, or Schedule 80. So let's plumb in some 1/2 inch CTS tubing right now to show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to remove the garden hose fitting. I'll take off the female coupler. I'll take off the garden hose nipple. It's 3/4 garden hose, a 3/4 NPT thread. I'll put this aside. If I ever want to use a hose later, don't throw it away. And I'm going to thread in this 1/2 inch by 3/4 Quick Connect CTS fitting. CTS is copper tube size. There's a whole video in the tech section on tubing, copper tubing, CTS stuff. And we're just going to pop in this 1/2-inch CTS tubing and lock it. And now we are plumbed in. Again, I recommend 3/4, but if you've got good water pressure, this 1/2-inch tubing is fine. And again, if you're going to use a garden hose, make sure that the interior diameter of that garden hose is at least 1/2 inch. A lot of people try to get away with these appliance hoses, which have garden hose ends on them, but they have a 1/4 inch inner diameter, and that's not enough water to flow through a GX1000. And certainly not enough if you're going to hook up a booster pump later on. You'll have problems. Now that we're all plumbed in, what I like to do is take our wrench, our filter housing wrench, and just give the pre-filters a little turn clockwise, tightening, just to make sure they're snugged up. Sometimes in shipping, these things will come loose, so just make sure they're tightened up before we're going to turn the incoming water pressure on. One thing we should note, the KDF carbon filters, these are really highly catalytic activated carbon with a bed of KDF 85 at the bottom. They're really dusty. This is the cleanest and the best carbon on the planet, but all carbon's dusty, and you have to flush the dust out because you don't want it going into the membrane. These membranes are expensive, and this membrane is an instrument. It's cleaning your water just the way a battery starts a car. In a sense, it's a tool, it's an instrument. A GX1000 comes out of the box like this. The tube that connects the carbon to the membrane is disconnected, and there's a reminding sticker and a tag on the hose reminding you to flush this carbon filter before you use it. So what we do is you can take another piece of 1/2-inch tubing and run it to a drain. We just point it into a drain or a bucket, and we're going to flush about 10, 15, 20 gallons of water through this carbon filter to flush it out. And you're going to see how dusty that is. And we're going to do that right now. I'm not going to blast it on, just slow. I don't need full water pressure to flush the carbon filter. Just a little bit of water. And I can hear the water filling up. Here it comes. See how it's spitting air and water? It's not a nice even stream. The carbon filter is full of air pockets, so they're coming out. And look at all that carbon dust. I'm going to shut it off just to show you. This is all the dust from that carbon filter, and so you definitely don't want this going into a brand new membrane or a pump or anything whatsoever. So you want to flush these carbons for 20, 30 gallons. The best way to really treat these carbon filters, if you have time, is to flush it first, about 20 gallons, and then just let it sit overnight. Let the carbon bed down. The carbon will actually start to grab some of the hardness that's in the water and bed down and not be so dusty. Here's a little cool mod you can do. A couple 1/2-inch RO valves and a T. And what you do is you shut the valve off that feeds the membrane and open the valve. That'll go to drain. And then when you turn the water on, you got a carbon flush valve. And you can plumb this to drain, the same drain your RO is going to, so you don't have to pull tubing out anytime you replace the carbon filter. You just have this little flush valve assembly. Kind of cool, neat little idea you can do. Now we can see, we flushed this carbon for about 20, 25 gallons, and the water now coming out is crystal clear. There's no carbon fines and dust in it, and so we are just about ready to hook this up to the membrane. So I'll turn the water off. And all I need to do is plug this fitting into here, like that. Okay, now that the carbon filter has been flushed, we're ready to run this GX1000. We still need to bring the water pressure up slowly to purge the air out of the RO membrane. We're going to do that in flush mode. And in flush mode, we make sure that the flush valve located on the drain assembly is parallel with the tubing. If it's perpendicular, the valve is closed and it's normal RO operation, but we want to keep it open so that we're in flush mode. Most of the water, 99%, is going to go to drain. In this case, it's going to be this beaker over here, your right. And we're going to notice that it's going to start making just a little bit of RO water. And we want to flush the membrane for about half an hour. So let's do that right now. We're going to bring the water pressure up slowly. And we can see almost all the water is coming out of drain, and we are starting to make a little bit of RO water. And there's a lot of air bubbles coming out of the stream, you can see. And we're going to let this run for about a half an hour. Okay, you can see the water is kind of discolored. It's a little yellow, and that's the membrane storage solution that's in the membrane. It's kind of it's a glycerin-based storage solution, and it takes about 50 gallons of water to really flush it out. I like to leave them run for a half an hour, an hour. I like to really get it clean before you use that water. Now the membrane's been purged, all the air is out, all the storage solution is out. We're ready to make water, usable, drinkable RO water. And to do that, we close the flush valve. Now the RO is set for normal operation. I can turn the water pressure on. These units come factory tuned at a 1-to-1 ratio. And you can see right now, we are flowing 1-to-1. Let's talk about flushing the membrane on a GX1000. RO filters run better when they're never shut off. The problems arise when you shut the RO filter down and then all the scale, all the hardness in the feed water collects on the membrane surface and creates kind of a scaly, powdery surface, and we can show you what that looks like. One thing you can do to combat that is flush the membrane, and you do that by opening the flush valve. And almost all the water will go to drain. And you can see it filling up here really fast. When you flush the membrane, high pressure water flows through the membrane, jogs up particles that are along the membrane sheet and the spacer, and pushes them out the drain side. And you can flush for 3 to 5 minutes at a time. And after 3 or 5 minutes, just close the flush valve and resume normal water production.